Hopefully you guys are having a good time here at the 2016 ISE Sportsman Show here at Scottsdale. Again, like Wayne said, my name is Joe Uribe Jr. I'm here on behalf of B.A.S.S and all my fine sponsors. I do fish professionally part-time. I do sell boats for a living full-time though, but do get a chance to get out on the local waters. So today I'm going to kind of be going through a few of the different baits that I've used not only this season but the last season, and kind of give you little tips on the baits that I'm using, how I fish them, the type of gear that I use to fish each one of those different baits, and hopefully it'll help you guys all catch more and bigger fish. So again, this bait right here that I'm using is a jerk bait. A lot of different companies make them. This one here happens to be a B.A.S.S Edo 110. It's a really popular bait on the circuit. It's been around for a while. As you can see, that bait, when I pause it, just sits there and suspends. Very important to have a good suspending jerk bait. Make sure it's well balanced. You got to be very careful with some of these jerk baits. Can be very temperamental when you're changing hooks, putting bigger hooks on these jerk baits. So you got to be really careful. This B.A.S.S Edo 110 is about 4.5 inches in length, and it comes with size 6 hooks. So I've tried using size 4 treble hooks on there. It'll really allow that bait to actually sink more and doesn't really have the free erratic motion that it needs to. So it's important on these jerk baits that they have a good side-to-side motion as you're fishing it. And really on the retrieve, you can really fish as fast as you want. Obviously, colder water conditions, I'm going to fish it a lot slower, a lot more pauses in between. As we go into the spring and the summer, I'm going to speed the retrieve of that jerk bait up. So with a jerk bait, you want to just have obviously your rod pointed down towards the water. You want short little twitches. You really don't want to pull a lot. You can really overwork that jerk bait. If I sit there and crank and pull at the same time, it really comes to the water way too fast and doesn't allow that jerk bait to freely move the way it should be. So it's really important that when you're fishing this jerk bait, you want to just short pauses and about a half a turn with your reel handle. You can see it'll just sit there and go to one side, jerk to the other. And what's nice about it is it'll actually sit in front of those fish for a longer period of time. And it'll actually coax them into biting. A lot of times what I do when I'm fishing this jerk bait, how it makes it a lot easier for me to retrieve it, is I'll actually bounce the back end of the rod handle on my forearm. That'll keep me from actually pulling it too much. A lot of people will actually overwork it by using their whole arm when they're retrieving it. You really don't want to do that. You end up overworking it. You want to just do short little pauses, short little twitches with the rod, bouncing the back end of the rod butt on your forearm. It really helps you actually fish that a lot more effectively. Using this technique, I do use braided line, and a lot of people ask me, it's like, Joe, why do you use braided line? The braided line allows me to control my cast. I don't get a lot of line memory, of course. With braid, it has zero memory, zero stretch. I use a fluorocarbon leader. The brand of fluorocarbon and braid that I prefer is Sunline. Sunline makes an assortment of not only great fluorocarbon, but also braided line. The SX braided line by Sunline, it ranges from anywhere from 10-pound test on up to 40-pound test. I choose on this technique, I like 30-pound test braid, which is equivalent to about 8 to 10-pound test diameter monofilament or fluorocarbon. The fluorocarbon I use just really depends on how deep I want this jerkbait to go. This happens to be 10-pound test FC Sniper fluorocarbon, which I use mostly on my jerkbaits. Sometimes in the dead of the winter when it gets really cold and the bite gets tough, I'll actually go down to 8-pound test. And in the summertime when fish are a lot more aggressive, and I'm fishing it a lot faster, more aggressively and shallow, I'll go up to 12 and maybe even 14-pound test fluorocarbon. So when I splice the braid to fluoro, I typically like to use about a 10 to 12 foot leader when I'm using that. The type of rod that I like using is a medium action. This is a 7.5 foot. It's a performance tackle custom reaction bait rod. It's got a light action tip, but it does have backbone. There again, when I'm using the braid, I don't have as much stretch, so I don't really need a really stiff rod when I'm using that. So I like a lighter action rod. It'll also allow me to work the bait a lot easier and won't overwork the bait with too stiff of a rod. So you can see the action that you get out of that jerk bait when you just twitch it. It'll just sit. If you notice, that jerk bait will actually shimmy a little bit to the side as well. It's really key with that jerk bait. So The Mega Bass Ito 110, like I said, not only has it put a lot of fish in the boat for me, and I've won a lot of money out over the course of the years, but a lot on the tournament trail. It's not your average jerkbait. I mean, something like this is going to run you on the average about $25 to $30. So most of you, I know it sounds like a lot, but I can tell you, it's really key with this jerkbait how effective it is, how true it tracks, and how well it suspends. They've got a variety of colors. This one happens to be a Pro Blue. I mean, if you can see that, I'm not even doing anything with that jerkbait. See how it's just sitting there in the strike zone? There's not a lot of jerkbaits on the market that allow you to do that. So that's really critical when you're jerkbait fishing a suspended jerkbait, when the fish are suspended in the water column. Really important, like I said. So for me, I mean, spending $25 to $30 on a lure that could possibly make me $50,000 to $100,000 is just a drop in the bucket. I tell you, this is really key to have a great quality jerkbait. Obviously, fishing it with the right rod and reel. I use a Daiwa 100H Tatula. This happens to be a Type R 6:3 to 1 gear ratio. I don't like to go high speed with the jerkbait because a lot of times, there again, when you're picking up line, you don't want to overwork it. So I like using a 6:3 to 1 gear ratio reel. I've got 30-pound test Sunline SX braid with a 10-pound test FC Sniper fluorocarbon leader. So again, this is a 7.5-foot performance tackle reaction rod. It's 7.4. It's a light to medium action jerkbait or reaction bait rod that works really effectively in this technique. When I'm covering water with this jerkbait, most of you maybe can relate to some of the local lakes we have here in Arizona, like Lake Saguaro, for instance. You got a lot of flats where the fish right now in the springtime are moving up and down. This is a great search bait to find those fish on different depths. You can cover a lot of water with this bait. You can make long casts and really effectively target these fish that are moving up, that are ambushing bait fish, stuff that are moving up. So it's a really, really effective technique. And this is something that can be used year-round, whether it's winter, spring, fall, or summer. Just a great technique. You cover a lot of water with it. And it's not a bait that's really cumbersome where it's, you can really, it doesn't wear you out working it. So really, really effective. Again, it's a Mega Bass Ito 110. This color's Pro Blue, probably one of my favorite. The key with this jerkbait to make it suspend the way it does, it has tungsten rattles inside of it. Tungsten, it's a lot smaller diameter, but it's heavy, helps well balance this jerkbait. So again, I'm using size 4 treble hooks. I do prefer Gamakatsu treble hooks. One thing on here, I don't know if you could see that in the tank. I'll put it back in here, but if you look at that front hook, it's red. I like that red hook in the front. It gives it a target. As you can see that bluegill staring that jerkbait down, it's looking at that red hook and wondering how it's going to strike that. So what I feel on that jerkbait with that red hook in the front, it kind of gives the fish a target to hit. Well, if it hits the front hook, you've got 2 hooks trailing that. It'll actually grab the back of the fish, gives you a lot better percentage of getting more hooks into that fish to help you land more. So another little tidbit, a little key that I like to do on my suspending jerkbaits again. So that's going over a jerkbait. There again, could be used year-round. Really effective technique, something really popular, especially this time of the year in the spring as the fish are moving up.